just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
What's happening, guys? It's time for another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast with your favourite tutor, Ian Dawson-Mackay. Next Level Guy is the go-to's men's interview, interest and improvement website where I quiz the experts to find out the hacks, tips, methods and protocols that you can implement in your own life today to take it to the next level and live happier, healthier, wealthier, sexier and so much more. Today's guest is Andrew Sillitoe. Andrew is a business psychologist, performance coach, public speaker and author from Kent, England, blending over 20 years experience as an elite international sportsman and coach, along with 3 published books and acclaimed TED Talk. Andrew's innovative and straight-talking views on leadership, teamwork and strategy has resulted in his advice and guidance being sought after by key figures at several FTSE 100 companies. He's developed a new method to enable elite athletes and business leaders to fulfill their potential. This was the seed that eventually blossomed into his world-renowned 4 Keys approach. In this interview, we discuss his highly successful coaching methods, the 4 Keys approach, emotional pain and its repercussions, avoiding exhaustion, building proper working patterns, and creating a proper work-life balance. And then in this interview, there is something for everybody. There's great advice for those who work for somebody, or for themselves, or for those who are looking to make the change between the two. Please don't ignore this one just because he's talking about entrepreneurship and working with leaders. There really is something for everybody here, and it will help you on your chosen career path. Enjoy. So, if we met in a bar and we had, I was asking who you were and what you did, you've got an amazing story there from coaching to, entrepreneurship to writing books. From, not many people go from hockey to having awesome books out. Can you just tell me a little bit about yourself, your upbringing? How did you become you?
Okay, so I started out life in a bakery, a family of bakers. Dad was a baker, granddad was a baker, and I was my 2 brothers, 2 sisters, all grew up working in the bakery, and I was destined to be a baker. That was my life, all kind of mapped out. And my father, though, had different intentions. He thought that maybe the bakery business was going to struggle, with supermarkets opening up. This was the mid-'80s, and he moved into construction and made some good money in construction. Unfortunately, as quickly as he made it, he lost a lot. And when I was 16, unfortunately, my father passed away. He was 48, so quite, he was young, and that kind of left a bit of a mark. Obviously on my life, but it also made me think about how I'm going to live my life and to focus on what I loved doing. So in a way, it was a terrible, traumatic time, but a bit of a blessing in a way as well, because it put me on a bit of a discord. It kind of just sent me on a different direction. And I'd grown up playing street hockey. It was the 80s. Roller discos were the thing, and off the back of the roller discos, played street hockey. That was just the way it was. There weren't any ice rinks near me, so street hockey was the next best thing. But even street hockey is a bit of a unique sport, I think, for a kid in sort of southeast of England. But just followed that passion and sort of shaped a career out of it in some form or another, and ended up moving to Canada when I was 20, and then made my way down to California, played roller hockey down there, and it was all the sport was growing quite a bit in the 90s and late 90s. Early 2000s, and just caught a bit of a wave, and then it's kind of it just went from there, just sort of blossomed. And I had to have a career as well, so I was, making money doing hockey schools and sort of bringing those 2 worlds together. And then by sort of 2004, I decided that maybe I need to get a proper job. And my friends will say I sold out because I joined Yellow Pages and kind of moved into that world, but it was all worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite an amazing kind of, as I kind of got into your story and I started reading, and I was really sorry to hear, the story about your father, but, you've used that pain and you've really kind of built something from it. And it's really inspiring the way that you've gone from there, but it was when you started talking about like roller hockey and things like that in your TED talk, and it's especially like I'm from the UK as well. It's not something that we're very accustomed to doing. How did you get into sort of roller hockey? What was the attraction? Was it something you enjoyed as a kid always, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, hockey was in the family because my sister played field hockey. So I spent most of my childhood following her around and watching her as a kid. She played county level. So hockey was kind of, so there were sticks around the house. But I remember very clearly the day that I had a hockey stick in my hand and was on at skates at the same time. And at that point, I just believed I'd invented the sport. I didn't know. And I remember saying to my neighbour, we should play this more often. He just didn't seem to get it. I mean, we were 8, 9 at this point. But it felt like the most natural thing in my life. I remember it very clearly where I was, even the time of day. It was sort of late evening. It was dusk was coming in, and I just remember having a stick in my hand and being on a pair of roller skates, thinking, "This is it." And it just like the lightning went through my body. And then it just turned out that a form of the sport existed. There was street hockey existed. There were teams in my town. There were, I turned up to the roller disco, and there were the marshals were wearing their hockey jerseys, and it just caught me. I mean, I played other sports, rugby, football, but the moment I started the hockey, it was, and it went from being a craze and a trend where the local, kids just played, to me just really pursuing. And I was very lucky that there was a group of us that played. I'm from Tunbridge Wells. We had a team called the Tunbridge Wells Cruisers, and we ended up traveling all over Europe playing. So Switzerland, Denmark, Germany, Holland, and we just had an incredible time, as teenagers and early 20s, just sort of traveling around in the back of a transit van. You just making a bit of money, spending it on a weekend away, and that was our life. But interestingly, what happened was that we were just a group of local lads, but two of us, my friend Stefan, we got asked to play for a team called the London All Stars. We got this all expenses paid trip to Florida, and this was about 93, 94. And it's just like a dream come true. I mean, everything was paid for. I mean, not just the hockey and the travel, but I mean,
nice. I can't complain on that.
It was just amazing. I mean, it was a different time. The coach was, from North London. He was he was making his money through raves and I don't know what else. I mean, it was just a different time, right? And he just took us away. He played hockey back in the day, and just wanted to coach us and take us away. Anyway, so when we got there. We realised that, in those days we were still wearing the quad skates, 2 wheels at the front, 2 wheels at the back. And when we got to Florida, all the players were on inline skates, rollerblades. And we noticed a lot more ice hockey players, kind of style. And they were just so fast. And my friend and I, we came back to the UK and said, look, we've got to get on these rollerblades. This is the future. And we were awful. Like we were terrible. I talk about this in business, about change, and when you implement new systems or new processes, new ways of doing things, typically performance drops off, and it's that resilience and that perseverance to keep going. And for about a year, we persevered with these skates, and the sport made fun of us, said it would never catch on, and then we ended up winning one of the biggest tournaments in the sport, and we beat Düsseldorf, who was a big city for us, and beat them in the final. We won again the following year because everyone else had switched to rollerblades, and we're going through that change curve. So if there's anything Tunbridge Wells is famous for, infamous for, it was that we revolutionised the sport.
It's something like you can grow up in the Highlands, like where I'm originally from, and when you start investigating like some of these American guys and other like major name people, and you think, oh, I never knew that about them, like when they're writing their books and that. And I never even knew about the roller hockey side of my own country. It's quite amazing. Yeah. So how did that kind of change you when you were that age? Did you have kind of? I remember you saying in your TED talk, what happens on tour stays on tour. So I'll avoid certain questions about ladies and things like that. But how did that kind of experience of seeing new cultures, travel, building a bond with teammates, and competing against people in different countries, do you think it kind of changed your outlook and things at all? Did it help you shape the man that you became and the kind of teachings that you give to people now?
Oh, I think massively. I mean, I'm incredibly grateful for that experience. I started traveling to Europe when I was probably about, I think my first trip I was about 14, 15, and I was the youngest player. So most of the players were about six years older than me. So I was kind of caught up in that, and I'm hugely grateful for that. I mean, we all are. We still meet once a year. The team, we get together and we talk. The same stories come out. But it's those trips, the silly, driving up the wrong way on the freeway in Germany, and and all those kind of things that happen, that you just meeting and making friends and crossing cultural barriers, and just understanding that people do operate in a different way and have their own way of doing things, and being accepting of that, and appreciating that there are different cultures. So I think when I did move into a corporate environment, I felt a level of maturity, I think, and empathy, maybe, a natural kind of level of empathy that people are wired differently and have different approaches and ways of doing things. That became very apparent to me at quite a young age.
Because it's not often, we as men, I try to not sound a complete knob when I say things like that, but it's not often we get to experience other cultures, and it's always amazing that you can guess how somebody's going to be by knowing where they've come from, like the kind of area they grew up, the kind of, if their parents were religious, if they're, what kind of school they went to, because that's our life. Yeah. But you got an amazing experience, and you got to experience culture where before we even get a chance to, where most guys don't get out till they have their their lads holiday after school and all that, and they've already shaped their kind of biasism and their views on certain cultures and life. So is that, do you think you were a bit more receptive because of the unfortunate event with your father, with your kind of times traveling? Is that where the kind of, I want to say, fight against guys being like, burning the candle at both ends, and, the hustle till you die kind of thing, is that where it comes from, do you think? Yeah. Have you seen the other side of that kind of philosophy?
Yeah, I think like, regardless of what happens, and losing my father at 16 was there's no doubt, and in fact I'm realizing it more so now at 25 years later, that was a traumatic event, and accepting that it was a traumatic event, and that I probably experienced, I have experienced some level of stress off the back of that, which has played out in other areas of my life, whether it's my relationships and so on, and very unconscious.
Do you think did you think kind of dealt with it at the time? Because it's nothing on the scale, but I mean, I've had a really sort of traumatic breakup at the time when I was younger, and even now I kind of see stuff that happens in my personality where I think, oh God, I can see reactions from myself from what, like I avoid certain confrontations because that's what I avoided in the relationship. Do you think you still have kind of hang-ups from it, or?
Yeah, I think, I think we all have patterns that play out that have kind of embedded themselves through different experiences, and there's definitely an opportunity for us all to undo some of those, or break some of those unwanted patterns. Definitely, but there's also a level of personality that's hardwired in us, from a young age, that would have existed before that event. So it's quite hard to kind of really analyze what is a consequence of that and what isn't. So I try not to think about it too much, but I know there's specific things that played out had played out in my relationships that were, I'd consider, dysfunctional. And when you start sort of putting the pieces of the puzzle together, you start to go, oh, okay, now it's starting to make a bit of sense as to why maybe I behaved like that, and that wasn't really useful for me. And I think we all, I mean, whether it's therapy or coaching or whatever, we've all just sitting still and just thinking these things through can be, beneficial to all of it. Just starts to make a bit of sense.
Yeah, because when I'm trying to think how old I was. I had 3 grandparents die of cancer in the same kind of year span. Like, it wasn't like a proper year; it was like a crossover of a year, and I think that was my first real kind of sense of proper loss. And a lot of guys were never really taught those kind of skills. We're taught how to be quiet in school, how to go and play part of a team sport, but we're not kind of taught how to deal with that kind of thing, how to deal with loss, how to understand it, and we kind of bottle it up a lot of times. And some of us, we just go and try to burn off the feelings, through drink and drugs. Some people do it by working hard, businesses and stuff. And, your stuff was the first stuff I found in ages that's looking at the negative side of that. We've got a culture now of, let's hustle till we make it. Let's, build your passion at the side and all that. And is this what you've sort of seen a lot now? Is guys really just destroying themselves from it? Has it become a sort of mission not to let it happen to other people?
Oh, definitely my mission. Yeah. And unfortunately I'm people come to me when it's broken, and I wish they'd come to me sooner, and see it as a prevention rather than cure. But I'll give you an example. Recently I had engaged with a client and to coach their MD, and I have a questionnaire, and he filled out the questionnaire, and he was surprised that my questions weren't just about business and profits, and although it covers it, but it's also about the relationships, what's going on with that, is it an enabler, what about their health, and he went a bit quiet. He said he found it useful, but he actually went a bit quiet in sort of arranging the dates and booking our first session in. But I got an email from him last week, and he just said, look, I'm sorry for not being in touch, but I think now's a good time for us to get together. My relationship has broken down, and I'm kind of just a bit lost with it, and it's affecting my work. And you kind of think, well, we probably should have had this conversation 6 months ago, and unfortunately, I think going back to your point, we do leave it a bit late. I'd like to think that we get an accountant on board because we don't want to get into debt and have problems. Although I still speak to business owners who still ask me what a VAT return is, and you think, well, we left that a bit late.
Yikes!
Yeah. So that still happens, but if we look at it in a proactive way, you've got your financial advisor, you've got maybe a business coach there as well, and helping you just kind of plan ahead and avoid and navigate some of these things, because being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, leading an organization is incredibly hard. There's a lot of pressure, but I do believe there is a way to let go of some of these things, and then people take, I find that they take it on a lot, and probably take on more than than necessary actually, and they lose that balance, and then they go all in on the business, and they let their health and their relationships and their mindset suffer. And my clients that I work with, where they're finding the most benefit is by going all in on their health, their relationships, and their mindset, and then the business just takes care of itself.
Is there like a kind of when you're sort of the people that you're dealing with on a regular basis, do you see the kind of common problems that comes from that kind of lifestyle? Do they realize it themselves and they come to you, or is it that they know something's wrong and you can sort of pinpoint the red flags that are causing these kind of things? Is it obvious that get to these guys, or are they that focused on their sort of business and stuff that they don't realize where they're going? I'm hesitant to say wrong, but do you know what I mean?
I do. I totally know where you come from. I mean, I can see it coming. They might not be experiencing it that way. There's a bit of denial, I think, that this is happening or it won't happen to me. But statistically, it's very likely. But at the same time, whilst there are people that are pushing themselves, they're hustling, and they're showing the pictures of a new car, and they've leveraged themselves, and and they're trying to keep up with the Joneses and living that Instagram lifestyle. And I see it. A lot of these people have started their business in 2010, 2012. They didn't experience the recession. They're young guys, and haven't planned for a downturn, because the inevitable downturn. So when it does happen, they've got the lease, the mortgage, the expensive outgoings. So I see that happening, and they're just on that emotional roller coaster. But I'm also seeing that there is a shift in people saying, what, there has to be a different way. I don't want to get caught up in that lifestyle. I do want to find purpose in what I do and create a more purpose-led business, or if I'm working in an organization, to have a more purpose-led career. So there's definitely an enthusiasm. I sent an email out on LinkedIn to 900 people. We had about 25% response, which is pretty good on LinkedIn, my first degree connections. We just asked the question, as an entrepreneur, what does it take to win and manage your well-being? And those words were, win and well-being together. And it was just interesting, the response, because we had this quite black and white, and it was a specific category of people that said, well, you've got to just get on. You can't win in business unless you work the hours. It's just a reality. Something's got to give. And there was this other group that were just saying, that well-being is my priority, my health. The better I look after myself, the better I am in business. And every now and then I have to go a bit harder, be a bit more aggressive, etc. But the balance. And it's not about work-life balance. It's not about saying, right, well, I finish at 5 every day. It's actually some weeks I need to work till 9 o'clock, but I'm planning ahead to book that time in, either for myself to relax and take care of myself, or I'm planning that weekend in so I'm give my partner some time away from the kids, or whatever it is that they're planning ahead. And that's the key with work-life balance. It's not finishing early or starting late, or it's an overall far more organic view. And I think that's an attractive shift in business, I think, that we're seeing. And for me, the way I describe it is it's kind of like a return to an agricultural mindset. We've had a bit of a blip in the last 200 to 300 years with trying to bring so much order to chaos, when actually chaos is always going to exist, particularly in agriculture. And I think what digital has done is it's brought that back, that sort of fluidity that the Industrial Revolution tried to get away from. That everything's got to be in order. Everything's got to have some sort of level of certainty. And I think that people are starting to resist that now. Starting to realise that actually you don't have to work that way. We don't have to work 9 to 5 and be as productive as possible during those times and just burn ourselves out.
And do you think that comes from the way our parents are brought us up, that because that's the way they did it, that's the way we should. But, with sort of technology, the way it's coming now, there's what do you call it, lifestyle independent businesses, and there's so many ways to do things that you could have a sort of side hustle. I hate that term, but you could have a side passion while you're working. There's so many different ways of doing things, but we have got one of these kind of competitive cultures where it's like you should be spending all your time, you should be getting more money. Oh, they've got a new car, you need to get a new car. Oh, you need to showcase your life more on Instagram compared to the next one. And even though you're comparing your entire life to their well-chosen highlights on Instagram, and it's all fake, but we push each other and compare against each other. How do you find to stop that? How can we stop comparing ourselves? How can we just let the ego go and just be happy with what we're doing, and let the work and the side and the relationships and all that, how can we just be happy with what we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think you answered it. But it's not as easy as it sounds, which is letting go and recognizing that I don't have to have a big house to have status. I don't have to be seen driving a certain car or wearing a certain watch to have status in society. I can have status in a much more positive way through influencing others, through creating an environment for other people to thrive, through serving your community, whether that's your customers locally, globally, but and just literally just letting go, and that's very hard in a society where we are marketed at, and we also have that sort of Darwinian nature of trying to get above, and grow and develop and get ahead. So there's an element of that in our DNA, how we show up in the tribe. So there's always going to be a group of people that want to get status, but I honestly think there are better ways to to get status than just putting your elbows up and sort of wrestling your way to the top. I just prefer just to do the work, and if it gets you there, it gets you there. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Because that's when you start hearing the find your passion and just go for it. Don't just find your passion. Like, and you'll say like, but how do I find it? How do I know it's the right passion? How do I know it's not what society's tell me to do? And people will say, find your passion, because that's the generic advice that goes around, and we're not always kind of aware of what we're meant to do with that. Would you say that's bad advice to give somebody, or to use as your kind of base inspiration?
I think it's a stepping stone passion. I think it's, I talk about this in my book, Passion versus Purpose, and I use hockey as an example that there were times in my hockey career where, I certainly followed my passion, but that passion made me a little bit selfish as well. So I was kind of on a bit of a mission to try and be the best player, for Great Britain to do really well, for the team to win, but it was serving my passion and my own agenda. When really I was a much better player when I played with purpose. And what I mean by that is how do I make the players around me better? How do I give them more time on the puck? How do I move the puck quicker and let go rather than holding on to it so that I look good on the puck? And if you take that analogy and put it into business, how do I serve the people around me so that they can move forward and be brilliant? And whilst the short-term effect of that is that people might even get ahead, and it feels like we're getting left behind, but I truly believe that eventually you have your day. Equally, you have your day if you're selfish. So it's just that long-term picture that I think purpose serves. So I think, yes, if you love playing the guitar and you're passionate about it, then follow that passion. But if you're just playing for yourself, you're probably not going to attract an audience, right? So you play for the audience. You serve the people around you. If you're in a band, you serve the band. You be your best for the band, and help others sound even better. And I think whatever your passion is, it's how do I serve others with that purpose, with my passion. So if you've got a vision, for example, of achieving X, Y, and Z, how does that vision benefit others? And I think when we find that balance, then it becomes bigger than ourselves. And when it becomes bigger than ourselves, we enter that kind of law of attraction, and then things start to come back. So that might sound a bit fluffy, but that's that for me is how it works.
Would you say that's the main problem, is that people start a business and they're so focused on, this is what it's going to do, this is how it's going to change the world, this is how we're going to, this is how the products we're going to offer, this is our pricing schedule, but they've forgotten to, how's this going to actually improve people's lives? How's it going to, why would somebody buy this? Why should we care about this? Is that the main issues you find with these kind of businesses that you deal with?
Yeah, I think it's particularly startups. They have a brilliant idea, a brilliant product. The product's brilliant, but no one wants it because it doesn't serve anybody. And if nobody wants it, no one's going to buy it. And then it doesn't matter how good the product is. And sometimes we get a bit too excited and become emotionally engaged with it and so on. So I think it's always that reverse engineering, looking, that's what entrepreneurs do. Is good entrepreneurs, they see a pain point and they aim to fix it. It's not their own, it might be their own pain point, it might be something they're experiencing themselves, but they recognize that it's not just them, there's lots of people. And once you've recognized that and you can build a product that serves that pain point and that makes other people's lives better, then you're probably going to sell it. And I mean, that's just, there's arguments for and against that. I mean, take Henry Ford making cars when everyone just wanted horses. So there's all different ways of looking at it. But at the end of the day, it served people. It got people from A to B faster. So I think that it's just that reverse engineering, working backwards from what people actually want or need.
No, I love that kind of approach, and that's why I think your stuff is so helpful, because you cover stuff that we don't really get told. It's just kind of, go get your hustle. Yeah, no, work 24 hours a day on it. When you're not working at your job, you should be doing this. No breaks. You should just get into it. And then you say, well, how do I know it's the right thing for me? No, find your hustle. Well, how do I know I'm doing it right? No, spend all your free time at it. We get the kind of generic terms over and over again, but nobody really gets told how to know it's the right thing for you, how to know, like, how to balance it, how to actually enjoy it and stuff like that. Something that you said, I'm trying to think where I read it, but it really resonated with me was when you mentioned, and I think it was your website actually, that you had like a subconscious value of taking the easy way out. And, you would always go the kind of take the easy side. How can we identify, like values that are holding us back? Because that's something I did all the time. I would always kind of self sabotage when I got close to being successful, or I would go the easy road if I wasn't being pushed by somebody else. How can we make sure that the values that we are taking on when we find our passion and purpose are actually beneficial and going to be the best for us rather than destroying us in a way?
Yeah, it's that sort of self sabotage, isn't it? But again, it's where's it coming from? And it for me that taking the easy route was because I was given the easy route as a child. And I talk about this, and my mother was great. It allowed me to be a free thinker. Was very supportive of any passion I had, anything I was passionate about. She fully supported it. So I was very lucky in that respect. But equally, if I wasn't passionate about something, she would go, okay. So school was one of those things. So it kind of encouraged one of those easy way outs for me. If I didn't like something, I kind of just went, it's not really for me. And I think there is a time and a place to demonstrate that work ethic, to challenge ourselves, to be uncomfortable, to push ourselves through, to see something through to the end. I don't think that's hustling and just going 23 hours a day. It's just sometimes there is a time and a place to see something through to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that taught me a bit of a bad habit that if I loved something, I would see it through to the end. If I didn't, then I'd probably just sort of switch off. Um, uh, and I think particularly in our teens, 20s, we have to learn to push ourselves a bit harder. And that was something I had to teach myself, to say, actually, this is out of my comfort zone. I don't really like it, but I'm going to have to see this through. And so I call that value: do the work. No excuses. Get it done. It's aligned to my vision. It's going to help me achieve what I want for me and my family. So I'm going to have to dig a bit deeper here. And I think there's a difference between hustle and in sports. That's where hustles come from. You hustle hard in sports, but you also know when to hustle. You don't just go out there and hustle for 90 minutes of the football match, or the ice hockey game, or there's a time and a place. You pick your moments to be that little bit more aggressive, and life's the same. You look for the opportunities, you kind of sniff it out, and you need that time of reflection and not hustling to take that breath, to reflect, and then those opportunities to say, right, now I need to be a bit more aggressive here, and I'm going to put some effort in for the next 90 days or 2 weeks, or this particular area I'm going to really play to my strength and hustle here. That resonates with me, versus if I'm not hustling, I'm not achieving. And that's when the burnout comes out, and that's when the missed opportunities happen. We need that downtime to make sure that we're going in the right direction.
So what's like I don't know if it's probably the right term for it, but like, what are kind of red flags? Like, say if you're a businessman just now who wants to work with you and thinking, I never really contemplated this, but yeah, this I can see myself in what you're saying. How can we start noticing? Like, what should we look out for as that's the start? Those are the warning signs that something needs to change now, or you're going to have like catastrophes later on. Do you have a kind of general list of things that you say to people? This is the point that you need to stop and change your path because you're going to have a problem later, or is it a case that you kind of have to, go through it to learn from it to not let it happen again?
Yeah, there is a bit of that, unfortunately. I experienced it myself. So, I thought I'd learned the lesson from my father, but I was following a similar pattern, working hard, thinking I was having it all in place. but on reflection, I was just very passionate about what I was doing, and quite frankly, selfish, but unknowingly. I thought I was, being a good dad. I thought I was being a good husband. I thought I was doing all the right things. So there is an element of that's where perhaps where a coach can help and just sort of paint that picture of that this could be on the horizon if we don't balance what I call the 4 keys. That your business, body, relationships, mindset, and start thinking about this on a daily basis, rather than I've seemed to have put on a bit of weight over the last 2 years, or my wife seems to have kind of seems to be having a different conversation these days, or whatever it is. Or I'm just feeling like I don't have the headspace anymore. I mean, they're the sort of things I would be listening out for in the coaching conversations. But really, it's just about action. It's about, okay, what action do you need to take? What do you need to let go of? Where's the ROI on letting go of some of these things? And that's what we would explore.
Well, now would seem a perfect time to take a quick break and tell you about my affiliate products. I have set up some awesome deals with some amazing companies. There are so many special offers, listener exclusive deals, and discount codes available. Simply go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates. That's www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates. There really is something here for everybody. It depends what you're looking for. There's the comfiest jeans in the world, which are like tracky bottoms. Those are from the amazing people at Barbell Apparel. There's special deals on Amazon. There's Blinkist special offers and discount codes. There's a Gaines box, geeky sex toys. There's Greys. There's a Hustler Hollywood. There's Mankind underwear. There's MeUndies, which is all amazing stuff. There's Mr. Skin, My Protein. There's On It. There's Real Social Dynamics. There's a Fantasy box. There's a Protein Works. There's Under Armour. I keep adding to it almost weekly. I'm setting up amazing deals and special offers with some great companies. Simply go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates. All the monies that I receive in commissions from these companies is then used to make the site better and better. So please use and abuse the codes. I don't get any affiliate data back in terms of what you buy, what you spend, or anything about you. I get a small commission from the company as a thank you for sending you to them to buy from. So again, it's www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates. Enjoy, and now let's get back to the interview. So, what was the inspiration for the your books? Because it's rare for people that want to then go and share what they found to be really successful. These people kind of hold on to their secrets and don't want anybody else to know that they're like why they've become such a successful coach. What was your inspiration for the books? Because every time I looked up a review of you, it was like 5-star, people saying that you'd changed their lives and all that. So why not just keep it to yourself and be the guru who changes businesses? Why did you want to write a book and kind of share this with people? Is this like your mission now in life, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think in this industry as a coach, it chooses you. It becomes purpose-led. It becomes a mission, and it becomes an overriding. I think that balance of passion and purpose, loving what you do. So writing the books really is a way just to help others avoid some of these challenges. So even though that I experienced that with my father, I was still experiencing it myself, which was a huge surprise to me. So it's just my way of sounds a bit cliche, but giving back, and that's something I'm very passionate about.
So one of the things I wanted to really sort of touch on was like you had mentioned on your site, I think it was now where are we? It's your belief that doing is improving. Can you expand a bit on that? And like what people listening, how can they start doing and making sure they're not just working for the sake of working, but they're actually doing to improve?
Yeah, so I think that's basically from the training that I do. So any training that we do, leadership development, coaching, is we do the work. Doing is improving. So we can read all the books we want. We can take on all the theory. That's great, but it doesn't necessarily improve us. So it's just about getting out there and playing with these tools and techniques. If you read a book on something and it says do something, then go and do it. because that's where the improving is. It's not, we don't improve by just keep reading it over and over and over again. We get out there, we have a go. Some of it works, some of it doesn't, and you don't see a professional football team, soccer team on the pitch, on the training ground, learning how to play the game, or the coach talking them through the theory of the game. They practice and they practice and they practice. So it's giving you a chance to practice, develop yourselves. But for the most part, the real learning experience is in the action. So if you want to be a speaker, and yes, you should practice your speaking, but the best way to be a great speaker is to get out and speak. Just throw yourself out there. So that's what I mean by doing is learning, is do it.
Perfectly said. I mean, that's what I really liked about your stuff was you're very straight to the point. You're very kind of, you don't fluff around, you don't go head in the clouds philosophy kind of stuff. You just give people real manageable, action, concrete steps that they can take. And I think that's why you've been so successful. And when you were a coach of Team GB and things like that, it's because of the way that you build strong, dynamic teams that succeed. But when you've looked into sort of leadership and things like that, where do you think guys go wrong with leadership? What's the best way, leadership approach that you found? Because I think you said when you're working with Team GB that you could go in and tell them this is the philosophy, this is what we're going to do, but unless you built it with a team, it wouldn't stick to the guys. How can we build a sort of firm foundation with them, and how can we build a strong, dynamic team for somebody that's maybe starting a new business?
Yeah, so I think there are five essential components, principles, rules. We call them locker room rules. To win the locker room, to get your team heading in the right direction and aligned. And the first one that we talk about in the leadership program is, and it seems so obvious, but it's have a game plan. What is the objective? What are we trying to achieve? And are we all seeing that game plan through the same lens? That's the first thing. So the leader is usually, or the business owner particularly, is usually quite a bit further ahead in the way they see the vision, the way they see the business going, and being able to articulate that in a way that helps people understand and see it in the same way. And so the second part of this, second rule, if you like, is ask, don't tell, which is being a facilitator. So rather than saying, well, I've got to tell everyone my vision, and I've got to tell them over and over and over again, and I've got to tell them what the roadmap is to getting there, I've got to tell them the tactics. Well, in sports, you can tell players the tactics over and over and over again. It doesn't mean it sticks. What you really want them to do is say it out loud back to you, or better still, add value to it. Talk me through. We've got an opponent coming up. Talk me through how we're going to beat this team. What is your understanding of their gaps, their strengths? How do we take advantage of them? And in the same way in business, how do I facilitate that discussion so that I'm getting my team to contribute to understanding what the market is, what our clients want, who are the competition, how do we beat them, what is the roadmap? And that ask, don't tell philosophy is very powerful. The third thing we look at is as you build your team, you need to start to identify who your captains are, who your assistant captains are, and also your skeptics. You're going to have people in your business that perhaps aren't bought into the game plan, don't quite get it, not sure about the strategic direction. You get that in the locker room. So you need your captains. You need the people that, as you start to scale, start to grow, start to build your business, that when you want to go out and meet clients, or maybe you want to take some time off, or whatever it is, that you've got somebody or a group of people who are maintaining that culture as you go forward. So when you're not around, the culture still exists, or the high performance still exists, as people hold each other accountable. And the fourth rule is fail fast, learn quick. Creating an environment where people can have a go at things. I'm not suggesting we lower our standards or repeat bad behaviors, but not feeling the fear of picking up the phone and speaking to a client, or getting out there, or doing some sort of work, whatever it is, that people feel free of any anxiety to have a go at this work and learn. And then the fifth rule, I've kind of mentioned it, but it is hold each other accountable. So the ask, don't tell philosophy is great. And Sir Alex Ferguson was a great example of this. He he's known for the hairdryer, this kind of red-faced, angry man who's barking from the sideline, but also equally regarded as a father figure. How does he do that? And now gone on to be a Harvard professor off the back of his 25 years of Manchester United. And what people don't realise about Sir Alex Ferguson is that he was holding people accountable against what they said they would do. So he wasn't telling them, you have to do this, and then hold them accountable. He was asking them, what is their commitment? What are they aiming to achieve? What are your goals? What's your intent every time you go on the pitch? What are you trying to achieve within our tactics? And then his job was then to hold people accountable. And that's really where he would get angry. And then, like any coach, and that was my role as head coach, was to hold people accountable. And if I felt let down that people didn't achieve what they said they were going to do, then I would be disappointed, and they would know that.
Now, how could somebody take, that kind of foundation parts that's not in a business, that's maybe not building a team, but, works for a company but wants to build a strong, sort of firm foundation in their own life, mentally, physically, emotionally, with their family, their children, etc. How can we use that transferably and build in our own lives? Because not everybody listening is going to be interested in building a business, but it's going to love the way that you look at it and your sort of your message. So how can we use that, regardless if we're a business person or not, like to get peak performance?
Yeah, I think there are a few things there that could be explored. One is, the solopreneur who is sort of building the business around themselves, whether it's around their brand or just, wanting to be an independent trader. There are a lot of things that they can bring into that. And one of the biggest challenges and we can build on the Manchester United example, is that you kind of have the glazier's hat on. You're trying to think about, how do I grow my business? Where are the opportunities? And then you're kind of thinking, right, how do I get organized and be the best version of myself and make sure that I can also be out on the pitch scoring goals and winning. And then if you do grow a team, then you've also got head coaching roles. So you've kind of got three levels. But I think there are things that people should be thinking about, and that is, how do I take care of my health? How do I make sure that I'm doing things daily that make sure that I'm ready? One of the things I talk about as a value is always ready. So doing things today that will have a positive impact on my performance tomorrow. So I know people want to enjoy themselves, they want to go out, have a drink. But if that's affecting their ability to do their work, if it's affecting their ability to be present with their family and enjoy the time or whatever it is, then I think you have to seriously ask yourself if it's the right thing to do. And equally, finding time. I'm not suggesting anyone should be doing any sort of type of chronic training or being in the CrossFit box every day or, signing up to triathlons and things like that. But just staying healthy and fit and strong daily, putting in time for the relationships, and most important, looking after their mindset. Just slowing down to speed up. I talk about a lot. Just slow it down, slow life down. Don't feel guilty because you're not hustling. The incorporating that reflection, whether it's an hour just once a week or 10 minutes a day, just to stop and think and be still, is where some very powerful tactics, ideas, solutions will come about. And so that slowing down to speed up is hugely important, rather than just being on top speed all the time.
So what should somebody sort of be doing during that point? Should you be meditating? Should we be journaling? Should it just be a case of taking time away from all technology, from the business, and go for a walk? Or, what would you advise to somebody to how to slow it down to speed it up?
I think do what is comfortable for you. So some people will like to get the Headspace app out or Calm app and do some meditation. For others, that just sends them off to sleep and they don't find it very useful. I like doing postures, so some sort of combining a little bit of strength work where I'm stretching and sort of mobilizing myself and breathing. I find, and then I finish off with maybe just laying down for 2 to 3 minutes. I find that very useful for me. I think a walk around the block. I think going to the park. I think just sitting on the couch and just having nothing on, no TV, just sit there and just think. It's very hard for some people, particularly entrepreneurs and people who are ambitious, to be still. But it's a very, I think, a very important part of our life. That's slowing down. So I think you do. If journaling works for you, journal. Whatever slows you down and makes you think and calm, then just do what works for you.
You know, there'll be people just now who are pure panicking, thinking, "What do you mean? Just take some time away? You mean just stop? No, I can't do that. I can't do that." You know. So
People are often surprised when they say they don't have any time, and I say, well, if you haven't got any time, if time management's a problem for you, here's what I want you to do once a week. I want you to block an hour out of your diary to do nothing, and they're pleasantly surprised.
So how did becoming having your own family, how did that change you? You know, like how did it kind of shape your teachings? Have they changed at all, or have they made them sort of more, I want to say dynamic, but it's probably not the word I'm looking for. You know, how has it kind of changed your outlook on life and the world?
Well, I think it inevitably has changed my outlook. It's got me to focus. I'm 43. My first daughter is 20. Right, so I was 23 when she was born. So I was young, and so that kind of that got me focused and maybe think differently about the hockey and everything else that was going on. And now I've got two little ones with my wife, and they're 2 and 4. And I think
Very, very hard work.
yeah, and obviously I love them to bits, but I think I'm a better father, than I was for my youngest. And I know it sounds my daughter would probably stick up for me, but she'd also give me a hard time for some of the things. But I have a very good relationship with my daughter. She's traveling. I've been very lucky with my work that I'm in Sydney at the moment. I was fortunate to spend a weekend with her in Melbourne. She's off to the Philippines. She's grown up into a wonderful woman. So I'm very proud of her. But I think we do learn, you learn with like any experience, to be better. I don't think we're certainly ever the finished article, because every child is different and requires a different type of parenting. And, it's an ongoing lesson, isn't it?
Well, I'm an uncle just now, and I love being able to hand them back. But like after this, going to be like crazy. Yeah. But it's the wonder in a child. It's the way that they look to you for how are they to sort of navigate through life, and they want to see from you things. And I think that's the best kind of coach. It's somebody that they want to be around because of how they make them feel, and how you kind of build on their wonder and inspiration. Would you say that the way you were raised has sort of helped you become a better parent, or have you realized now that the problems your own parents faced when have you understood by becoming a father how difficult it was? Has it helped you kind of deal with your own upbringing, maybe? Or
yeah, but I think there are still patterns that manifest themselves unconsciously in us all. So whilst we might look back and say, well, I didn't really like that about my parenting, I'd like to have been different. And then when we take another step back, we go, actually, I'm playing this out in exactly the same way. And that's surprising to me, So I think it's very hard to shake off some of these things, the way we interact and so on. So, but I think for the most part, we learn from our parents, and we try and put things right, or at least kind of emulate the good stuff and try and not do the stuff that perhaps we didn't like. But I think it's just an ongoing learning experience, and I think leadership is very similar. I think there's never a finished article, and whilst having children brings some responsibility, and like you say, we become responsible for how we shape them, the environment we create for them, the way they thrive, and the trajectory of their life is dependent on the parenting. And I think leadership is very similar in business. Anyone that's in a leadership role is, rather than thinking, oh, I've got to deal with people, actually you're in the same way, you're responsible for the trajectory of their career, their life, the their goals, all of that, their aspirations, their dreams. And I think that's one of the hardest shifts for any leader is to recognize that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I can think back now because when I was younger and the way I kind of batted heads with my own dad, and because of the way I thought he was just being a bit of a dick and all this kind of stuff, And when I look back now with having like two nephews and a niece, and how you've kind of got how you've got to help not breed them, but I've got to be like the inspirational uncle, the one that they are glad to see every time rather than think, oh God, here we go. But it kind of helps me realize now and put a piece how I dealt with my own dad and how he did things the way he did it and stuff like that, because of he couldn't be your friend. He couldn't be like, he couldn't just let you do stuff. Why he did things, and I think that kind of helps me in my own like kind of professional life as well, with the podcasting and being able to build connections, because you start to understand it now. But it's just annoying that you can't do it when you're younger. You can't understand that. It's
no, we just don't have that same, that level of empathy as youngsters. It's hard to see it from their perspective. I think they're inherently selfish as teenagers, and that takes some growing out of. It serves us.
I mean, do you see like you back then and your children now? Is there any kind of like warning signs that you noticed that you quickly think, oh no, we got to change that now? Or is it just a case of letting them develop and seeing where they're going and just trying to just be the best parent you can be? What advice would you give to somebody who's a new dad or expecting their first kid or becoming a stepdad for the first time?
Yeah, I would just do the best, create an environment, a positive environment, so that they can thrive. Don't try and fix them. There's no fixing. So if you notice something that you don't like, yes, they need support. They need sometimes some tough love, all of that good stuff. But they're on their journey, and it's a wonderful journey. And it's in some cases it's not always that positive, but it's their journey. I'm a big fan of the work by Byron Katie, and I found that very powerful in that not being judgmental, letting people live, letting people explore and experience life, and they tend to flourish more than trying to think, oh, hang on a minute, we have a problem, I need to fix that, bring some control to it, which inevitably is going to end up in probably more loss of control. So. And that's very difficult for parents, very difficult. But that's the reality, I think.
So for people listening, I mean, what advice would you give them? What if somebody was listening to this today and they came back to you in say 3 months, 6 months, whatever? What would you want them to do? Like, what would you want somebody to take from this as a kind of challenge to implement into their own life, and then come back to you in whatever set of time and just give you feedback? What would you want people listening to go and do now that would have the biggest impact in their life? Is it a habit that they could develop? Would it be just creating that hour a day just to kind of go away from everything and reflect? Or do you have challenges that you do with your clients?
Yeah, we have lots of different challenges sort of within the group. I mean, the first challenge is to think across the 4 keys on a day-to-day basis. So what have I done in my business today? What have I done in my body today? What have I done in my relationships? And what have I done in my mindset? So business, did I achieve an action, a result that I aim to achieve? In my body, did I sweat? Did I do something that pushed myself a little bit? Not beyond to failure, but just meant that I'm getting a bit stronger, a bit healthier. Did I do something in my relationship, whether that's within your inner circle of friends, your clients, or your partner, that added value to them, that made them think, that you're thinking of them? And mindset is, did I slow down today? Did I take some time, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is, to stop and think about the 4 keys: the business, body, relationships, and mindset. So I think that's the daily habit, winning daily. I do think it's important to have a vision and have some sort of idea of what we want out of life. But then it's about how do I get action orientated and do something in the next 90 days? What can I achieve in 30 days? What can I achieve in 60 days? And have some sort of end goal, that something we're working towards, and that can help us get to our vision quicker. And I always hear arguments for and against that, but I'm a strong believer in having some sort of direction, something that you're working towards. Because when we're working towards something, we're growing, and we're testing stuff, we're failing at stuff, we're learning from stuff. But we only learn if we can build that time in to stop and reflect. And I think maybe that's why people don't want to reflect, because they don't want to reflect on what's working well for them and what's working against them. They'd rather just keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting that different result, which we all know Einstein said is insanity. So
is that moment into it? It's like, nope, that's my comfort zone. It's a lot safer here.
Yeah. If I just bury my head under the sand, hopefully it will come good. Well, it doesn't always. Just lift it up, have a look around. What's going on? Okay, I need to make some tweaks here. I need to change. I need to improve something.
Because it's kind of strange to think like that. All the bad stuff that's happened in our lives has brought us to this point. It's also brought all the good stuff. It's people struggle with kind of accepting that sometimes, is that we do sometimes have to go through the negative. We do sometimes have to graft, but there is a lot more to life than just burning ourselves out at both ends, hoping, try to just keep the head in the sand. And I think that's really sad, is that some people can get to like 70, 80 years old and then realize that they've alienated their children because of like they didn't know how to communicate with them, so they kind of just buried themselves in their work. And that's why I think your stuff is so vital, because you're not counteracting, but you're actually giving that message that a lot of people need. Is yes, it's great to work, and yes, it's great to produce and make awesome content like you're doing, but not in the detriment of your family, of your relationships, of yourself, your foundation, And I think we really need that message. And you're such a kind of like nice guy to speak to. It's easy to connect with you, and I really think you're helping people. And I can see you're going to go massive places. I mean, you're coaching Team GB. You're transforming businesses. You've got an awesome books out there. But if you could have your time again, would you change anything, or do you think this is what you needed to go through to become yourself?
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you, Ian. I appreciate that. I often think about that. What would I have done differently? Would I have moved into entrepreneurialism earlier? Did hockey get in the way? I always think of these different things, but I have to accept that everything that's happened in my life has shaped me into what I am, and even those around me to a certain extent. So we have to be grateful for what we have. I'm grateful. I'm sat in here in a hotel in Sydney, and I'm going to go and check out the harbour and do those sort of things. So I feel very blessed and grateful for that. So would I change anything? I'm sure there are a few things I would change, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. Love what is, and I appreciate what is, and make the most of what I have.
Well, I know we're very close to our time, and I really cannot thank you enough. I'm so glad we got that connection, and I can see why your stuff is so vital and it's changing people's lives. And I really cannot wish you anything but success for the future. But for people who are listening, thinking, obviously I want to get you back on at some point soon, but how can we keep in touch? What do you want people to have as their go away message? Like, what do you want people to take from this interview if they could only remember one thing from it?
I think that the one thing is identify that group of people that you can serve, and if your passion serves that group of people, you're off to the races. And maybe you've got a passion, but you don't realize that it can serve your community or whoever it is. So how do you take that passion and shape it into something that improves other people's lives? So I think that's once you tap into that, that's the game changer. So yeah, that would be the one thing, I think.
I love it. I mean, it's everything that you do makes perfect sense, and you're giving the world the correct message, and I think that's awesome. And I think you're going to be fantastic. You're going to keep going places. That you're obviously turned into an amazing guy, and that's why I'm so glad when I got that connection and wanted to have you on the show. But for those who are listening and they want to find out more about you, keep in touch, get the books, work with you.
Yep.
Where can they go? How can they find out more about you? Connect on social media? Any projects you've got coming up that they can take part in?
Yeah, so Instagram, Andrew Sillitoe, Instagram, Andrew Sillitoe, Sillitoe. I'm LinkedIn is a big playing ground for me, so I'm on LinkedIn and I post a lot of content on LinkedIn. So happy to that would be very happy to connect. We have a Facebook group which is called Get Fit to Win, but I know my social media manager guys is looking to change that to the 4 keys. But if you search Get Fit to Win, all the 4 keys, then it should bring up the Facebook group. So that would be I'd like to invite your listeners to that. And I'm always putting out free content, just videos and a lot of topics that we've talked about.
Well, your TED Talk is brilliant. I always admire people who can do them, and you looked like you had a great time, and it's just.
It's fun.
I mean, are you planning on doing any more in the future?
I think I'd like to, and maybe think of just a slightly different topic, or a kind of 2.0 version of that talk that I gave. I think there's a follow on from that, which would be an interesting insight, I think. So maybe watch this space.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for this. It's been fantastic. There's still pages of questions and areas I want to cover, so we've got to get you back on. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and I just cannot thank you enough for everything that you're doing for people and just for the great advice you've given today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.